Welcome to In Such a Time, conversations on Jewish life, leadership, and meaning. Each week, Rabbis Jonathan Jaffe and Londy explore the moments, questions, and ideas that shape who we are and who we aspire to be. And now for this week's conversation.
Welcome back to In Such a Time, conversations on Jewish life, leadership, and meaning. I'm your co-host, Rabbi Jaffe, with Rabbi Londy. And today, in connection with the Chagim, with the high holidays, we're going to talk a little bit about both our own memories of how we came to learn about, observe the high holidays, and parts that were meaningful or less meaningful to us, and then a little bit more about what we take with it these days. So I think we're going to start off talking a little bit about some of our childhood memories of the high holidays. So, Rabbi, would you like to start us off?
Sure. So anyone who has been around me during the high holidays knows that I'm nervous. And I never used to understand why I was so nervous during the high holidays, especially before I became a rabbi. And then someone pointed out to me, oh, because both of your parents were clergy and high holidays is super stressful. So just getting into the end of the summer is just associated with me. It's like Pavlovian. I'm just I get nervous, but I'm actually not nervous for once. And one of my first really meaningful high holiday memories, I have many at synagogue, but this is actually one outside of synagogue. One year, my mother took us, me and my brother, to the hospital on Yom Kippur. And we went and visited, I think about, I don't know, maybe 20 Jewish patients. I don't know, maybe I'm overestimating that. But we brought chalot, we brought grape juice, and so we did kiddush motzi, and then we blew the shofar, did apples and honey. And I remember just being so powerful for two reasons. Reason number one is that it brought so much joy to people, people who could not get out of bed. This was before the technology of live streaming services. And so their only connection to Rosh Hashanah was in their hearts. And then all of a sudden someone comes and does this for them. That was that was beautiful. And I also remember thinking that my mother was such a genius and a good person for doing this. Who would have thought of doing this? And she's like, well, this is what I do when you guys aren't around, but I thought about bringing you with me. And so that just really, that stayed with me. Just do an action and not just a prayer. And the second reason that it was meaningful for me is that I realized that there's other ways of being Jewish other than sitting in synagogue and praying. And I do like synagogue, obviously, and I do like praying, also maybe obviously, but using your feet to do a mitzvah and taking your time to do that was kind of life-changing in my understanding of what it means to be Jewish. Judaism's about acting, not just about talking.
That is so inspirational, and I'm going to be such a letdown after just hearing you talk, because anyone who knows me growing up, I'll still get to this day questions of, you're a rabbi, really? So my earliest memories of high holidays are being taken by my parents. We would sit towards the back. They would bring me paper and crayons, and I would be on the floor drawing or something, because I've always been fidgety. I've always been, shall we say, ADD adjacent. And I couldn't sit there, and I had to be dressed up for it, and just overall feeling frustrated and annoyed that I had to be there. So that was number one. I remember getting a little bit older and having all of these questions and feeling as though they weren't answered. And my questions weren't theological ones. My questions were much more operational ones. The rabbi would say, and now we're starting, turn to page 182. And I'm like, why are we starting on that page? And why does it never start on page 1? And then he would read for 2 or 3 pages, and then he'd say, and together. And then we were all supposed to read the whole same thing. And does he have a secret manual that said, this is where the place where you make them read instead of you read? And then he would skip 2 or 3 pages. And I'm like, why are you skipping those? Are these ones more or less? And then the choir would, take 10 minutes to sing half a page. And I'm here counting the pages to know how much I have left. And I always wanted to know, it's like the Wizard of Oz, who was making the decisions? What was read? What was sung? What was skipped? What was there? They didn't tell us any of these things. There was no instructions about it. I remember when I worked on the Matzah, the High Holiday Prayer book that we used here, I made sure we start on page 1, and I wrote all of these explanations. And in the back of my head is me as like a 12-year-old being like, what's going on here? Why are they doing this? And wanting to answer those questions. I remember feeling confused, perplexed, but then also just annoyed that like no one provided that information. We were assumed to just follow along. Then the last one I'd say is that in teen years was you'd go with your family to synagogue, and then you'd go outside and you hang out with the other teenagers. And there was a small preschool. We'd sit on the swings, and I would like try to learn how to talk to girls. And like that was honestly for me, like the synagogue high holidays. And I think that so much of my perspective as a rabbi is trying to undo or recreate better experiences for kids than I had back then. And it was the rabbi was lovely, and we still have a great connection. Both my parents were temple presidents, so I should be more positive about this. That was
okay. No,
why,
I don't agree with you. Like the synagogue and the Beit HaMikdash was also for social interaction.
yes.
And it was about that. Like
yes.
that was all supposed to happen. So
Yes,
just because
we
you
learned to
wouldn't,
date. Yes.
right. I was telling you that's where my brother learned how to play poker on the
Right,
holidays. Like
right.
you learn certain life skills. Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's fine. So I guess that when from the starting gun going off, I've always had a problematic relationship when it comes to the high holidays, and that then manifests in another way in later in life. And that is, if we were going to say that all of Jewish prayer can be boiled down to the 4 words of gimme, oops, ouch, and wow. And I would say that 90% of Jewish prayer is wow. And for me, as we've discussed, so much of the meaning is in the wow. That the 10%, pretty much all of the oops and the ouch are in the high holidays. And that it is, I think, the tenor of the liturgy of the high holidays, of the Al Chet, of the Avinu Malkeinu. So much of that is about oops, ouch, and gimme. And for me, less of the wow. And it's not only personal, but I have an external fear about this. Because for so many Jews, they only come to the synagogue at the high holidays. And the high holidays, for me, is such a diversion from the wowness of other holidays, and especially just of a weekly Shabbat observance. And I like to think of it this way: if you only went to one movie in your whole life and they were showing a horror movie, and you ran out of the movie and says, "Oh my God, that movie is so scary. I don't like movies." Right? If you go to the high holidays, that's your only synagogue experience, and you're talking about who by fire, who by stoning, who by drowning. You're reading a Torah portion about a guy trying to kill his son, and God likes this. This is a good thing in Judaism. For me, there, again, we can unpack, and there's beauty behind all of this and explanation, but at surface level, at face value, it has a lot of themes which are so difficult to wrestle with and are so incongruent with some of the more affirmational messages of the rest of the year. If I had my druthers, first of all, Temple Bethel members, please come to the high holidays, so don't let me dissuade you. But I wish that people would come to Simchat Torah and Tu B'Shvat the way they come to Yom Kippur. I'll say one other thing here. In the evolution of our observances, Yom Kippur was not originally the biggest day of the year. Yom Kippur was a cleanup preparation day for the big holiday of Sukkot. And before you welcomed in God's presence into your sukkah, you were going to try to start the year off new by first atoning and cleansing and purifying. It was a means to an end. And that the message of guilt and of atonement resonated so much in our community that it has become the de facto holiest, or the actual holiest day of the year. And I kind of resent that. I wish that our congregants knew Simchat Torah, Tu B'Shvat, Shavuot, the way that they know Yom Kippur.
So you wish that they had an appreciation for like the pilgrimage festivals.
The celebratory gratitude,
Okay, can I
life
push back
affirmation.
on this?
Please.
I mean, Yom Kippur is Shabbaton, like it is the holiest day of the year. And I'm very much with you. I think like you can't just check in with your Judaism once a year and think that that's going to be meaningful in any way and then write it off because it was too much, it was too long. Like I agree with you. You have to be, for anything to be meaningful in your life, you have to be well practiced at it, well versed and committed to it, or even a little bit committed to it. So I agreed. Having said that, I love that we have this moment of communal accountability and communal responsibility, and that we talk about, um, like, we're also going back to liturgy of the past, of like these vidui, the confession and al, like, this is what I've done. I think it's so important that Judaism has a mechanism for atonement, and for more than that, for tshuva. Like, you've done something, this is how we fix it. And we're living in a period of time where I think more and more people do not want to take responsibility for things. And I think it's on us as a community, as leaders in a Jewish community, to make that something that is not necessarily a turnoff, but like saying, like, look at this mechanism that we have to deal with these things that are happening right now in society. Like, this is teaching us how to take accountability. I agree that the pomp and circumstance of it, like the high church version of synagogue, has been a turnoff for many people, for years. But if you go into like a Sephardic synagogue, it's not the same kind of it's not the same kind of tenor. It feels different. And so maybe it's like the how you do it and not the what of it. Because I think it is important that it's also interesting to me that people still show up on Yom Kippur. Like, they don't have to show up.
They think they have to show up on Yom Kippur, and I wish that they felt like they had to show up on Shavuot.
Shabbat.
Right? Or on Shabbat, exactly. So I appreciate that. And I think there's truth on both sides here, and I see your point a lot. I think a lot of my feelings are, as a rabbi, externalist to thinking about how the congregants are receiving this, rather than like I might think to myself and know that when the vidui and al-chet, and that there's this meaning and there's optimism in it. But let me just run you through the scenario that goes in my head. And so in the models of Jewish education, I don't know if you grew up with, I grew up with, is that you would go to religious school when you were young, and you would learn these stories about a personal, caring, loving, jealous God who would punish the people, etc. And you would learn that till second or third grade, right at the point in which you would be able to understand nuance and metaphor. Let's say fourth, fifth grade, you would stop because you would get drilled with Hebrew to memorize and to regurgitate at your bar bat mitzvah, not knowing what any of it necessarily means. And then, 75% of American Jews do not continue with B'nai Mitzvah post education post their B'nai Mitzvah, which means that we've got generations of really not seventh grade educated, but like third grade theologically educated Jews out there, because we didn't teach them. And in the peak moments of middle school where they could actually get this, or post B'nai Mitzvah adolescence where they could. And so a kid who has not gone into the synagogue since their bar bat mitzvah and remembers that vengeful, angry God they learned about in elementary school comes in and reads who by stoning, who by fire, who by drowning, and says, aha, I remember why I resented Judaism. I remember why I ran away from this place in the first place. And now Yom Kippur, you have now confirmed everything that I thought previously, and I don't need to come into her. And maybe a year from now, my grandma will force me to come with her to synagogue again, and I'll do it as a sign of respect. But for me, this is not for me. And if they came to the synagogue literally any other day of the year, they would find something so different. And so that's what worries me. That's what weighs on me about this.
So my starting point is very different. I went to religious school too, but I also went to day school, and like, we had a lot of God talk in our house because my parents were allergic to that version of God.
Right.
And so it was a very philosophical discussion about theology, and very rationalistic version of theology. And I think that you're right. Like, if you think that what you're reading is based on truth, and that it's not folklore, and that it's from the word of God, and this is the kind of God that you believe in, that must be very scary. I wonder how we alter that, because it's interesting in conversations that I have with the young adults and with teenagers, when they talk about God with me, I'm always so confused that that's the version of God that they have. And it's in so many ways, they're very, they can hold such nuance and have very deep conversations. When it comes to God, it's black and it's white.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're helping me understand more, maybe your aversion to it, because as someone who sees like God in a lot of colors, like, I'm like, okay, well, God is this way, but like, God's also other ways too.
Right. It's like when a congregant will say to me, well, I don't know, Rabbi, I'm Jewish, but I don't believe in God. And I'll often say, can you describe to me the God that you don't believe in? Because I probably don't believe in that God too. But you may not realize that Judaism has breadth and depth when it comes to God, and maybe we could do a separate podcast at a time just all about theology and what our personal theologies are. I think it would be surprising for some of our congregants to hear. But I think that these are elements that unless you have the context, it's hard to pick up on the holidays. And again, this is why for me, when like creating our own machzor here and writing in so many descriptions and like you see in our prayer book, there's an entire introduction to the vidui to say like this is meant to shock you and that's on purpose and it's because you're supposed to encounter what it'd be like if I died today and what would my regrets be, and it's meant as a prompt. So here's my last complaint, and then I'll go to the positive as well. My last complaint, I've talked to the congregants about this in past high holidays, is fasting. Fasting, it kills me. Here's the problem with fasting, if I can. And fasting is great, but fasting for Yom Kippur is a means to an end. It is a means toward not having to make lunch plans and worry about cooking and such, and spending your day fully 100% in self-assessment renewal. It's just that, yes, there's this idea of limiting ourselves and of depriving ourselves, but really, and purifying ourselves, but it's really about being able to take these 25 hours and focus them entirely on our own self-renewal. What does fasting actually do? Fasting means, well, let's see, I'm going to eat a really late dinner. I'm going to sleep in as late as I can so I can go to the late service so that I won't be hungry. So then I'll go at 12:30 and I'll go home. Maybe I'll take a nap or I'll watch the baseball playoffs so I won't think about my hunger. And then as soon as I can, I'll eat something. That is that fasting means for many of our congregants that eating takes over the entire importance of the holiday. It is not a means to an end. It becomes an end in itself. And I've said to the congregants before, just go home and eat a power bar. Like, just get over it. It's not about the fasting. Fasting is a means towards self-reflection. If you feel like fasting is going to keep you from going out in nature and having a walk with yourself, or calling that person you need to call and apologize to them and repair that relationship, right? Or coming to the synagogue, then you're doing it the wrong way. Fasting has sometimes eats the entire holiday up. And I say one last thing as you're ready to go. Fasting, if our last podcast we were talking about the sublimation of the ego, there is this sort of machismo around I fasted. Like, I'm only 12 years old and already I fasted. Look at me. And I think it actually runs counter to the spirit of the holiday sometimes, because we've made it all about eating and our own personal strength that we can endure the hunger pains and get through it. And that for me is so antithetical to the spirit of Yom Kippur. So I say, don't fast, eat a power bar.
Okay, I'm not going to say that.
Go ahead.
I'm not going to tell anyone. I'm not going to tell anyone what to do, but also I'm not going to tell you not to fast. It's a day of. There's certain things that you do, and then when you give them up, you can't take them back. And so even if you're making the attempt at fasting, because fasting is something that's been done throughout the course of the history of the Jewish people, or because it's representative of a certain process that you're going through, then I think you can't take things away and then just assume that you can go on as usual. Like, certain things hold us in our ritual. Okay, that's part number one. Part number two is that I think that if you're dealing so much with food on Yom Kippur, and again, I think that the experience that you're describing is one that probably a lot of people have. But that means you're not busy enough on Yom Kippur. And I think that you need to busy your mind and busy yourself with social interaction or with spiritual interaction, or with just being. And I think that Yom Kippur is a day that we're a little bit uneasy, and we're not great at being bored, and we're not great at not having our
guilty as charged.
And we're not great at not having our needs met the moment that we need it. So if we're feeling the pangs of hunger, we're like, oh, I need that addressed right now because that's all I can think about. Maybe it's the opportunity to say, I'm actually going to try to calm myself down. And this is actually said by someone who has immense hunger. So I know
caffeine is the issue.
And caffeine is the issue. And the end of Yom Kippur, I am a beast. And if people always ask me, like, are you okay, Rabbi? I'm like, no, I'm not okay. But that's also part of, like, you get over the hump. And then And then you are okay. Like it's this full experience of just being a human in this world without having to meet all of your needs. And that's meaningful for me. And I want to share something that was really meaningful for me in two things. We talked about the experience of going to the hospital. I used to really like the behind the scenes of watching the synagogue get ready for the high holidays. Like the walls would be taken down, the chairs would be put up, and I was always amazed at like, oh my God, these chairs are going to be filled, and that the curtains would be changed at my synagogue, and we'd always get new clothes for the high holidays, and just think about like the schedule and the menu, and for Rosh Hashanah, and then the breakfast for Yom Kippur. And I just love the preparation. Sometimes the preparation is even more than the actual event. And when I was in Israel for many years, I loved watching how the whole country would get ready for Yom Kippur, because in Israel, the cars stop. It's the one day a year that there's no planes that come in or go out. It's 25 hours of silence. The radios turn off the music. The TVs don't have anything that are playing. There's silent radio stations in case there's a war. And the day before or the week before, everyone gets their bicycles fixed because it's mayhem, and everyone goes out and rides bikes throughout the country.
I believe it's called Yom Ofanim.
It's Yom Ofanim, the day of bicycles. And my kids would get really upset with me. I'd be like, we're going to shul. And they're like, we're not going out on our bicycles. I'm like, we are going to go on our bicycles, but like after we go to synagogue first. And whatever it is, just the preparation of being in a space where everyone is doing something in a similar way is very powerful. Like we're all fasting together. That's powerful. We're all going out on our bikes, hanging out in the streets. That's very powerful. Where I lived in Israel and Givatayim, there were some religious families, but it wasn't overly religious. And so part of the going out was like the kids would go in their gangs and the parents would like have snack stations.
How Yom Kippur is.
How Yom Kippur is.
Sounds like my kind of Yom Kippur. Have that power bar.
So that's what I'm trying to say, is that whatever you do, be committed to it and fill it with meaning.
Yeah.
Fill it with meaning, but something that's holy to you, not just with the mundane. Like the mundane, in my opinion, is thinking about like, what am I going to eat and I'm hungry.
Yeah. Or I should sleep in as late as I can so my day is shorter so that I don't have to be as hungry.
I mean, that's one of the things I think I'm really proud about regarding our Yom Kippur observance this year, is that we're trying to offer many different ways for people to engage.
I understand that, but you would admit that looking at our numbers as they come in, the 9:30 a.m. service is more popular than Rosh Hashanah, but the 12:30 p.m. service is more popular on Yom Kippur. Rabbi, why do you think that is?
I'll speak from experience that I used to read the Haftorah of Jonah in the afternoon on Yom Kippur.
Yes.
And every single year I get a talking to from my parents because I'd like take a nap and then almost miss the Haftorah.
Oh my goodness.
I know. So
Repent.
I will.
So I'm going to say two more things on this. I love your optimism to my pessimism, and I promise I'll get to some optimism.
It's very counter. It's
kind of our personalities here. I also worry sometimes that the idea of fasting on Yom Kippur almost creates this feeling that certain mitzvot are more important than other mitzvot. Well, am I Jewish? I fast on Yom Kippur. Well, that's great. Do you keep Passover for 7 days? No, I do a Seder and I eat bread the next day. No, do you do anything for Shabbat? No, but I like this idea of fasting on Yom Kippur, I think has taken on elevated importance beyond its actual importance as like the mitzvah, like above mitzvot, because it's connected to Yom Kippur. And I feel like we kind of have to bring it down from its perch and say it's just a mitzvah like every other mitzvah. And right, it's not better or worse or more important. It's another mitzvah. And I think many parents don't even know what that is. But the last thing I want to say is I think that some of our experiences and our outlook have to do with something you just mentioned about upbringing. That is that the overwhelming majority of my lifetime, I have lived in places where virtually no one was observing Yom Kippur. So in Hawaii, trust me, that I was the only kid out from school, one or two maybe on Yom Kippur and on Rosh Hashanah. They did not cancel classes for it, nothing like that. And if anything, I was like a bizarre uh, mystery of what is this thing that's Yom Kippur. Later on in life, and I live in California, I live in San Francisco. San Francisco does not have a Jewish neighborhood. It was not founded by Orthodox Jews. It's different that way. So because of it, you don't have an area where the Jews live, which means that when the high holidays come and you live in San Francisco, if you're not in the synagogue, you'll have no idea that it's happening. There's no signs of life around it. I remember one of my happiest moments moving here to Northern Westchester, going into the restaurants, the catering places around here, going to Susan Lawrence the week before Rosh Hashanah. We do not get paid for that mentioning. And everyone is in there ordering and talking about what they're going to do for Rosh Hashanah, what their plans are, who they're spending it with. And that, I mean, we were talking, I was almost 40 years old. Outside of the times I've lived in Israel, that was the first time I'd lived in a place where like the high holidays are actually in the air.
Yeah.
So it has always been an experience of separation from me, where it sounds like you've had a much more like fully inclusive experience of the high holidays beyond even the walls of the synagogue.
Yeah, I think that's by design. Even when it wasn't a very explicitly Jewish community, it was by design. Like
Yeah.
you have to make it happen. And that's why I think I'm so adamant about like certain rituals you can't give up, because you have to make that space. If you don't fast, then again, people are going to do whatever they're going to do, and please don't report to me. Like everyone makes their own choices.
Yes.
But you have to do certain things in order for that space to be different than other times. Shabbat has to feel different for it to be Shabbat. Holidays have to be different for them to be holidays. And so that's where I'm at.
I appreciate that. And I agree with what you're saying. And now I'm going to turn and try to be a little bit more positive myself, because I don't want to bum out all of the congregants about the high holidays. We're about to say, welcome, come. We can't wait to see you for the high holidays.
We have to do a part 2 of this.
So that if a lot of my worry is external, is how is this going to be perceived? Let me explain a little bit more about where I hope this goes. For me, I guess my own self-discovery and the transformation around Yom Kippur was realizing just how much optimism it contains. And I think you spoke to this very well earlier, that Yom Kippur says that we should never be judged by the worst moments or decisions of our lives. Those should not cling or hang on to us for eternity. We should have a way to address the things we've done wrong, to atone for them, to apologize for them, and most importantly, to move on. It's a big deal. So in the 13 attributes of God, a section from Exodus, which is recited on the Bima, we say after all these qualities of God, that God then is forgiving all people, except, remembering the sins of those until the third and even the fourth generation. And the liturgy on purpose cuts off the end of that. Takes the quote out of context. It says God's forgiving for all generations, even though it's not even the end of a sentence, and cuts off the part about actually, but if your great grandfather or grandmother screwed up, it's on you, buddy. And that's on purpose. It's to say, no, we are not beholden to the errors of our ancestors. We are not beholden to the errors of our parents. We're not beholden to our own errors. Like, we get a do-over in life. And that contrast that with the idea of original sin and the idea that we are blemished by birth and that we cannot escape that blemish. That is such a different theology. It is such a life-affirming one. And I'll tell you the most, for me, optimistic thing about Yom Kippur is that even though we're about to observe Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah of 2025 of 5786, Yom Kippur of 2026 has already been scheduled. And what that means is that we already know we're going to screw up again. Like, if Yom Kippur really worked and we were such wonderful people, we wouldn't need it ever again. It would be like, okay, I apologize for my past sins. Now I'm going to be perfect. But the fact that we've calendared Yom Kippur on and on and on means that we know that we're going to screw up, and it's okay. And that, like, we are going to just have to, every once in a while, take stock of who we are, what we've done, where we've gone wrong, and we're going to have a chance to make it better again and again and again. And that takes a lot of, like, not just pressure, that means so much in an affirmative way that I don't have to be perfect. I just have to work on getting better. And that's a big difference.
I think it's the ultimate day of vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the high priest would go into the Kodesh HaKodeshim, into the Holy of Holies, and that was the one day a year that the original name of God would be said. And it was like such preparation, like put on certain clothes and dress in a certain color. And like we also do that ourselves today. Like we prepare like for this moment where he might not come out of the Kodesh HaKodeshim. Like he prepares himself for death because that might be it.
Right.
And to be in Yom Kippur, to be in the high holidays is to acknowledge like this existentialism. We are not guaranteed another moment. We hope that we have a next year. We hope that we have another opportunity, and we have to live every single day trying to do better, trying to build on that, trying to be in holy encounter with ourselves, with God, with one another. And the way that we do that is up to us.
Yeah. And it's a reminder to me that life is fleeting, life is uncertain. Things, it could be by fire, it could be by earthquake, terrible things happen all the world, and life is sacred, and life is uncertain, and we need to value life and take every moment we can in order to be the best. And we have to think to ourselves, if I were to die right now, what would I regret not having said? What relationships that need repair have I not tended to? Where have I come up short? And where do I need to, and this perhaps is most importantly, where do I need to forgive myself above everybody else? What's the guilt that I've been holding on to that does no one any good, that I need to be able to digest, address, like look at in the mirror, and then finally to move on.
One of like the last memory I'm going to share, which is related to that, is that, you know, I think one of our most packed services is Kol Nidre and then Yom Kippur morning. But in Israel, it's the Ne'ilah service. It's the last service. It's packed. Like it overflows. Sometimes you have to go outside. It's very exciting. And people are waiting to hear like the call of the shofar. People are waiting like for this moment of like, oh, we've survived Yom Kippur. We have not, God did not smite us dead. We have not destroyed ourselves.
Right.
Mostly we haven't destroyed ourselves over the other version of the God that I don't believe in. And I just love it, like for this moment of elation, like the last hearing of the shofar, this last moment of like of community and of just being together. Everyone comes together, and then it disperses. And so I really hope that this year is a very meaningful Yom Kippur, where like in high holiday season, where we're just proud of coming together and giving ourselves the opportunity to just be the best version of ourselves, and also like lean into when we could do better and take communal accountability for that, personal responsibility for that, and do it here at Temple Bethel.
So you mean in Israel, people don't all leave at the end of Yizkor and run out to go to Long Island before Nila begins?
People, it's interesting. It's a whole nother discussion.
Growing up in Hawaii and California, had never seen that before. That is purely an East Coast institution.
The big meal in Israel is Sudam of Seket, is the one before.
Right.
The one after, they don't eat bagels.
My Israeli wife, to the day, it is such a source of amazement to her that people eat matzah ball soup when it's not Passover. It's matzah. Why are you eating a matzah concoction on any other time? When did this become like an annualized Jewish food, right? Completely different.
I love that. My mother-in-law, who secular, wouldn't fast when I would be at her house on Yom Kippur, and that's a whole nother podcast. But she never fasted because that's just not her. That wasn't in her wheelhouse.
I love her already.
Yeah. She'd tell me exactly what to break the fast with, as if she was an expert on fasting. So she'd give me tea and cake, make me wait an hour, and then.
Well, you were like in your monster phase of like giving rough food, but then. So I'm going to make one last suggestion here. I don't know if you want to make one as well to end it here, but I one thing that really for me has become a hallmark and a joyous part of the high holidays is the idea of a Rosh Hashanah dinner, but specifically through the simanim, through the different symbols of Rosh Hashanah, and eating symbols of sweetness and renewal, and things like pomegranate along with your honey and your dates, and even like there's celery. There's all these different things that you're supposed to eat together with Rosh Hashanah. People should look it up, and to eat it's really the first fruits of the fall season of Rosh Hashanah is such a fun way to bring in the holiday, and something that I've really enjoyed at home. Is there anything else high holiday wise you would suggest or advice to our congregants?
Well, it's not so much advice as something that I really love, and we've discussed this before.
Is it fasting?
Love it.
Go on.
I'm a terrible faster, but I'll do it. I'll do it. Is that after Yom Kippur, you go out and you build your sukkah. So
Mhm.
after you finished this really long process of just making space in yourself for the rest of the year, and being committed to doing better in all the capacities, then you go out and you do something.
You
and
build.
You build.
Yeah.
And I just love that.
Yasher koach. It's beautiful. Well, to all of our congregants here as well, Hag Sameach and Shana Tova.
Tova.
May it be a meaningful experience for you. Try not to sleep through it and to stay with us for all of this because there's a lot of meaning to be taken from it.
Amen.
Amen. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for joining us on In Such a Time. Make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. To learn more about Rabbis Jonathan Jaffe and Leora Londy, or to connect with Temple Bethel of Northern Westchester, visit bethelnw.org, or follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Temple Bethel NW. Thanks for listening.